Today we're going to be talking about feedback strategies to enhance learning. And before we get into the content, let's, how's everybody doing today? We kind of do a temperature check to see how people are doing. So you could put an emoji in the chat or just to kind of do it to see how the, you can do this in your class to see how the class is doing. Okay. All right. Okay, all good. Great. Welcome, Charles. My name is Dr. Yvonne Johnson, and I work in the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning. And I've, oh, yes, tired now. We were talking about our spring break coming up, so hopefully that's at least somewhat of a break there. But yeah, everybody's kind of been spending a lot of energy. So thank you for doing that for our Huskies. It's great. Okay, and I've completed the AQ Credential Educator Program. You've probably heard about that. A number of our faculty and staff instructors have completed that. And if you all could share your name and department and answer the questions on the screen, just to kind of give a little introduction of each other so we have a little bit of foundation for building community. So who wants to go first?
I will. This is Leonard Lundstrom. I'm in the finance department, and I teach investments in corporate finance. And I'm always looking for new ideas for increasing learning outcomes.
Okay, great. Okay, welcome, Leonard.
And I'm Colin Cool. I'm an assistant professor with a joint hire in political science and environmental studies. I teach environmental politics, and I end up teaching a fair amount of graduate level classes. Yeah, I guess they lately they've been large, and so across all of them, just like the time spent maximizing the time spent grading, to get across what I want to my students has been, I guess, frustrating, since they seem to make the same mistakes.
Okay, well, it's a process, Colin. Okay, it's a process.
I know.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have some people with tech challenges, so we'll just hopefully they can connect again. Okay, Charles, do you want to introduce yourself, please? I can't hear you. I see your microphone. Is the volume up? Yeah. Can anybody else hear Charles?
Cannot.
Okay. Charles, could you type your information in the chat, please? It seems to be an audio issue. Okay, great. Okay, welcome. All right, so yeah, that's fine. We have different ways to engage here. So Charles is a PhD student in chemistry, so that's awesome. Thank you. Welcome. And as I said, we have a small group today, so we can raise hands and turn on your microphones or share in the chat. That's fine too. And so the objectives for today is we are going to look at different strategies for providing effective feedback. And some of those different techniques are to have some sort of a feedback plan and how to help students use that feedback to improve their work, and then different technologies for sharing feedback. And a feedback plan is a very good tool that can help you as an instructor to think carefully about how you're going to strategize your feedback. So you want to make sure that you're communicating clearly and planning effectively. And one of the things also, this is pre-feedback, but when you are designing your course, it's important to think about the assignments and how those major assignments fall in the timeline of your course, because if you have several major assignments all very close together in their due dates and time in the course, then your feedback plan is going to be really, really heavily condensed and concentrated in a certain few weeks or month or whatever. So you want to think about it way back when you're designing your course so that you can plan your feedback and you have enough time to give the students feedback, and then they have enough time to integrate it and then they can use it and do better on their subsequent assignments. And you can give feedback before and after the assignments, and it's important to give clear instructions. And what I do over time is I'll see what kind of trends I see with students having issues with a certain assignment, or with, they get confused about a certain thing. So I'll make sure to really clearly provide instructions for that and suggestions for how the students can avoid those similar mistakes in the assignments. And that has been helpful. And so that I would do before the assignment, and you can have feedback after the assignment for suggestions for improvement for future assignments. And you can give feedback during the assignment as well while they're learning. And it's important that the feedback is meaningful. And so students need to see how the assignments align with the learning objectives of the course. And then your feedback needs to be meaningful in bringing that together. So you want to make sure that you provide something meaningful and constructive that ties back to your learning objectives for the course. And then students can say, okay, I see why I need to work on that, because I really was missing this aspect of the objectives. So, the professor said work on XYZ. So I'll do that, and then I'll perform better on the learning objectives as we go along in the course. And rubrics are really a good tool for helping you to be equitable in your feedback, and they also help to streamline the grading process, because you can build them in Blackboard, and you can build the descriptions and the points and everything. And so then when you're going through and grading, it can really help you with being equitable, and can help to expedite that process as well. And there are also anonymous grading options if you want to, when you're going through the assignments, if you want to click on hide students' names, you can do that. And then you're not biased by any preconceptions about a student. You're just going through and reading the assignments and grading them using the rubrics. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, formative feedback is given when the students are learning. And so that's when we could have, maybe they're working on an activity in class, and you go around and you give suggestions to the students, or maybe they submit different versions or different sections of a major project, and you give them feedback. And the idea is that you're supporting them while they're learning. So they can take that feedback, they can integrate it, and then they can produce a higher quality product. And so those tend to be, the formative feedback tends to be lower stakes, lower point value, and then it ideally helps for those higher stakes assessments, those big projects, to have a higher quality because they've been receiving suggestions from you as they've been completing these smaller projects. And then timeliness, we all know that when if we submit a piece of work and we receive feedback within a reasonable time after that assignment or work product was submitted, it's fresh in our mind. We can say, okay, next time I'll do this, or I need to revise this, or whatever. But if it's been a few weeks and they haven't gotten any feedback and, they've kind of moved on literally and in their minds because they have subsequent assignments to do. So it's best to provide the feedback as close as possible to when they submitted the assignment. So, within the next week or so, so that they can integrate it. And if it's a bigger assignment, then maybe a couple of weeks, but you don't want to go far beyond that because they kind of forget about it and they just move on. And it's important to share with them how you're going to give feedback and tell them how they can view their assignment grades and things like that. And fortunately, we have Blackboard, so we can create a lot of information, and it's persistent information in this learning management system. So you can explain in there, grades are the province of the instructor. There's criteria in here that I give you. You can put the academic integrity policy if you want. That tends to be in the syllabus. Sometimes you integrate it in different parts of the course just to make sure if it's something really important, you can put it more than one place. And then you could, like this one says, viewing assignment feedback and grades. It says the feedback will be in the My Grades tool, so the student get familiar with using the My Grades, and then it says in there the projected when they can expect to get their responses. So this one says feedback will be posted within 3 days of the assignment due date for most assignments. So you have to come up with what date works for you. How many days do you need? How big is the class? How many other classes do you have? What's reasonable to get the students timely feedback and for you to be able to manage that within all of your workload requirements. And it seems that there's little comics about different things. So if you a grad student here is get this done as soon as possible. The comic on the left is the student is all stressed up. They think as soon as possible means, oh no, it's already late. Should have been done yesterday. And then on the professor side, the joke is that it'll get done, but it takes longer. So it's just best if you share with the students when they can expect to get the feedback, and then you won't have a bunch of questions about when are we going to get our grades. If you stay consistent with whatever that projection is for when you said you were going to give feedback, it'll help a lot calm down the students, and it'll help you to make workload if you come up with a reasonable projection. And there's different types of feedback, and so we'll look at a couple of different types. There's clearly there's feedback from the instructor or the faculty member, and it should be consistent and frequent. It's important that we maintain a presence in sharing that feedback because it orients students to the course. And if they're taking a course that maybe it's asynchronous or doesn't meet that often, then they can kind of detach from the course. So you want to make sure that they have regular, consistent communication between you and the students. And if you see a student that's kind of hasn't been to class for a while, then you can reach out and they can see that you're concerned about them and that you want to help them to be successful in the course. And so when you're giving feedback, it's important to, for effective feedback, we've used the Quality Matters rubric at NIU. We've used it for several years. And some of the standards for effective feedback are that it should be evidence-based. So it's you want to make sure that you have an example of something from their work and then tie it to the standards or the rubric, the course material, something that they can connect. There's evidence to show, okay, this needs to be revised. Here's what it connects with, and this is why it needs to be revised. And then they can dig further into the content and know how they could have done better, can do better next time. And then balancing the feedback, it's important that we want to keep students motivated, and we want to have a positive tone in our class. So we try to balance the feedback with positive and then suggest, so you have a positive comment and then some recommendations for revisions or improvement, and then positive comment. So we call it like a feedback sandwich where you um, put the suggestions for improvement in the middle, but there's also some positive, there's also some suggestions for improvement so that the student feels like, okay, I need to do some things to make this better, but, I also did a few things that were good. And so um, it helps them feel that they can be successful in the course. And it should be actionable. Um, so there should be, so if, maybe you'll tell them that they need to um, correctly use the APA style of referencing or something like that. So you want to make sure that it's something they can take action on, not something that's vague and doesn't really mean anything to them. And so they kind of go, well, I don't know what that means, so I'm just going to skip over it. And so another aspect of effective feedback is that you can measure it. So I suggested to them that they refine the APA style references. And so they took action on that, and then I could measure it. I could look at their revision, and I could see that they correctly integrated the APA style standards. And so that's an effective evidence-based type of um, feedback. And some different things you can do is have draft informative assignments. And I have major, I teach dissertation research proposal classes, and so I have scaffolded assignments and chunked up the major project so that on those smaller formative assignments, I can give them feedback. And so you're scaffolding the feedback. So you'll start with some of the more lower cognitive load type of assignments and then scaffold to more complex cognitive assignments after that, and you'll scaffold your feedback as well. And you can give feedback to individual students or the whole class. Sometimes it is useful to do a screencast because maybe that's the best way to show students how they can revise their assignment, or maybe if you do a screencast, you can go through and you're explaining to them while you're looking at their assignment and then giving them suggestions. And so there's different ways that you can share feedback. You can record audio and share feedback, and some students find that much more engaging. They like that. So what types of ways do you all share feedback in your classes? How do you scaffold those assignments and things like that?
I use the comment section in grading to give them feedback directly on their individual grade items.
Okay, yes. Do you use rubrics as well?
Yeah, most of the stuff that I do is quantitative, and so they'll have the rubric after, as part of the grading. I'll give them that, but I'll also make comments.
Oh,
In
all
my,
right. Yep, so that's good. So they have, they know how it's going to be graded, and then you give them additional comments. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I see Charles said mostly direct comments on their work. The point system is given to you. Okay, so Charles is saying he uses the point system that's part of the department's standard. Okay, great. And then Colin, how do you handle that?
I use rubrics in some classes, depending on the class. I will have like basically the same assignment multiple times during the semester to help them improve, and then I'll scaffold some writing assignments, like make them turn in something so I make sure they're on the right track early on. One thing I do for exams is I have like weekly reading quizzes that are fairly low stakes as a way for them to know what to expect on the actual, midterm and final and stuff like that.
And so how do they respond to that, those reading quizzes?
Well, I just graded midterms yesterday and they didn't go as well as I thought. But I think they like them. They also are just kind of a way for me to make sure that they're doing the reading. If they don't have that incentive, then they're not going to. So
yes, yeah, that's a good way.
I think they see the value, even if they find them annoying. But at the end of the day, they appreciate that I force them to do that throughout the semester.
That it's a good technique for kind of keeping them moving along and at the pace of the content you're covering and stuff like that. Yep. Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you.
I did want to ask though, just because I'm doing some PhD stuff, dissertation stuff myself, if you'd be willing to send some of the scaffolding you do for your class, I'd just be curious to look at that, because that's been a challenge in kind of developing dissertation proposals and stuff. That would be interesting for me if you'd be willing to share it.
Yeah, well, we can talk. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about that and then see kind of what you need, and then I'll put something together. Sure, that's great.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And then you can also have students provide other students feedback. And so it puts them in a different role, and they're thinking about giving feedback to another person, to their peer. And it's important to set expectations and guidelines for this. Way back when, the first time I tried this, I had students review each other's work, and it went fine, except for one person kind of went way overboard and kind of graded it like a professor would grade it. So I realized, I didn't clearly set the expectations. It wasn't supposed to be graded like that. You're supposed to give feedback about different parts of the assignment and how they could work better on it and revise it. And so that was a good learning opportunity for me. And you can have students help in setting those expectations and guidelines. That always helps to keep them more invested in whatever process you're using for grading or feedback. And then we talked a little bit about rubrics. Sometimes I also use a checklist. Rubrics are a very effective tool for grading. And if there's something that's like for a research proposal, I use a checklist because it's a very involved project, and so the rubric would be really long and kind of unwieldy. So I use a checklist and then assign points with that, and that works better for really, really long, complex projects. Some of the other projects you might be able to use a rubric for, but you can also keep in mind that a checklist is a possibility that you might want to consider. And one of the things that can come up if you have students give feedback to each other, they want to be part of that learning community. You know, we work hard at building that, and so we want this to be a positive um, sharing of information, not a, oh, you know, you didn't do this correctly or whatever. And students are sensitive that they want to have good relationships with their peers, and so you want to kind of set that up so that they understand that um, they should be giving meaningful suggestions, but not negative type of feedback. And usually when I do that, I'll have smaller groups, and then they kind of get used to each other. And one of the tools in this new Blackboard Ultra course view that we're using, they have a peer review function that you can use. So you can set up an assignment as a peer-reviewed assignment. And I was talking to a professor about that morning, and she said that it seemed like it was a lot more streamlined than the way she had to do it with saving documents in O365 and taking the students' names off of it and all that. With this process built into Blackboard Ultra Course View, the assignments, the names of the students and things are taken off. So that's going to save you some time. And when you have these interactions, when the students are giving each other feedback, and really with everything that you do in class, it's really important to plan for it and not just kind of wing it, because you can chunk up your class and say, I have so much time for the introduction, I have so much time for this activity, I have so much time for lecture, things like that. And plan out for the student-to-student interaction, and then you can gauge if you allowed enough time or if next time you want to increase that or something like that. But if you have it at least drafted out in terms of your time plan, then it will be a more effective class session with the students. And then in terms of group dynamics, you can have students work together. You can have some kind of a draft contract, and you can have them help to create some standards for how they're going to work together and things like that. And you can have checkpoints where maybe have a group assignment, and there's checkpoints where you're going to give them feedback to the whole group. And so if you have these contracts where it's kind of broken out, who's doing what and when it's due, then you have the checkpoints and you can give feedback to the students. And then if there's an issue with an individual student, you can address that. But it's important to kind of keep tabs with the group and go along as they continue through the project, so that it's not a situation where you've assigned a group, you don't give them much feedback, and then at the end, somebody comes up to you and says, that person didn't do anything, and I ended up doing everything. And so you want to avoid that. So you can do that by those checkpoints and that feedback as they're working on their group projects. And you can give feedback in different ways. There's tools. We have Kaltura Capture and Kaltura Express Capture, where you could do some videos of just sharing feedback. And when you do things like that, it tends to keep the students engaged more, because they see, okay, well, it's not just always reading text from the instructor. So I've done that with, there's a tool, it used to be called Flipgrid, but now it's called Flip. That's separate from the Blackboard system, but it is a quick way and an easy way to provide alternative forms of feedback. And then I talked a little bit about intentionally scheduling your time. And the point that one of these bullet points makes is that if you have the questions planned and the assignments planned and things, the students can tell that, okay, this is well thought out. I know what I'm expected to do. If it was kind of thrown together, then they think, oh, that doesn't seem that important. Maybe the professor just kind of put this together at the last minute. So that's when you have everything specifically kind of laid out. It can provide a stronger positive perspective to the students of how the class is designed and the value of the feedback and things like that. And you can use Blackboard groups. There's Collaborate, and they can share files and all of that. And I've had a lot of success using that for my students. When you're giving feedback or trying some of these new tools, what we found during the pandemic, and we were using all these different tools, and we found a lot of students appreciated the honesty and the sort of human side of, okay, I'm trying this new tool, it's not perfect, but I'm working on it, and it seemed to help build those connections with the students. And so you're sharing feedback with them about how you're using this time and space and these tools, and they appreciate that everything is not like a Hollywood style perfection, and they feel more comfortable sharing their level of expertise. And then self-reflections are a very powerful tool, and we know there's a lot of research to support the value of reflection and supporting learning and taking it to those deeper levels of cognition. And when students self-reflect, and what I do is I will actually build reflection into almost every assignment in every one of my courses now, because I teach qualitative research, and it's a required course for doctoral students, and some of them don't understand why they have to take it. Some of them want to do qualitative, some of them want to do quantitative, or mixed methods or whatever. But so I will build in reflections to all the assignments to help them to discover what they learned from this particular activity or technique that we've used, and how they can apply it to their profession or to their coursework or to their graduate plan. And it's been very helpful in helping them discover for themselves why some of the challenges emerged. Maybe they weren't open to a certain project, or maybe they didn't plan the time. They thought, oh, this interview activity wouldn't take as long, but oh my goodness, it took a lot longer, things like that. But it's powerful in the sense that I give them a few guided, open-ended prompts, but they're discovering the answers for themselves. And it's more powerful than if, the professor is always saying, okay, well, tell them this, the answers and all that. When they discover it for themselves, it's a lot more powerful, and they're more likely to retain it long term. And that's what we want. We want them to retain information way past the assessment. We want them to be able to use it after they graduate in their career, things like that. Does anybody use reflections in the courses that they teach, or have you had reflections in courses that you've taken?
I do a simulation in one of my classes, and a reflection is part of their paper there. Sometimes
Okay.
I'll ask students, like after they turn in a paper, to just kind of like maybe in place of one of those quizzes I was talking about, to write down what they thought they did well and what they didn't, and what about the process worked.
Mm-hmm.
But not as something I've graded. But I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I have found that they know once they think about it.
Yeah.
And that could be really really insightful for them. I like to think.
Yeah, I agree. They do know, and just those short prompts, and like you said, they know what they maybe could have put some more time into. So then I'll also add on, what will you do the same next time? What will you do differently next time? And like, okay, well, so it's having them also plan for the next assignment. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thinking through the
Okay.
process a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. All right, Charles. Okay, it's a good idea. Okay, great. Yep. Okay, thank you. And then we as the instructors can help the students use the feedback, because sometimes we give them this feedback, but then um, we don't know, they didn't integrate it the way that we thought they would. So if you are providing comments on the work, so in this first example, she's saying provide more detail. Okay, so I would maybe even go further, provide more detail about um, the outcomes activity or specific part of that you want more detail about. And so then the next one is, what do you think the goals were? So you're trying to get them to think beyond just that um, statement they put. The evaluator does not know what the goals and objectives of the program um, were. So, all right, so you're the student. What do you think they were? So you're trying to get them to think beyond just this small aspect of an assignment. And then, so we talked about evidence-based and balanced and measurable, um, and what's missing. So if you look at this, the author has, there's a purpose. Do you see evidence in here or measurable feedback or actionable? So for the evidence, if you look at the purpose of the goal-free evaluation is to create a picture of the program as it is. The evaluation determines the primary activities of the program and outcomes. And so needs more details doesn't say what the outcomes are. So we want more detail with that. Doesn't say what the goals were. So we want more detail about that. And then if you look at these comments, do you think that those are actionable and are they detailed enough, or what do you think? Okay, all right. So could you give some suggestions then if you don't think that they're detailed enough? Okay, so these the feedback it doesn't give an actionable um, item that's measurable because it says okay, so let's see. So Charles, they're not very actionable specifically on the first question. What details are you looking for as an instructor? Exactly. So it doesn't say what details. So you'd want to say, do you need more details about the current state of the program? Or do you want them more details about the goal-free evaluation? So yes, that's a great suggestion, Charles. Thank you. So it's kind of like the beginning of a comment, but it needs more specifics to it. And how would you measure that? You couldn't really measure, please provide more detail because it's too vague. So you want to know more detail about what? and action about what. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. There's different technologies that you can use for giving feedback. And a couple of us have talked about how we use rubrics and Blackboard. And what has your experience been using rubrics and Blackboard as far as using them for your teaching?
I'll say for me, I find them a pain to set up. um,
Yeah.
and I think in some cases that's prevented me from using them. But once I set them up, uh, they're pretty nice, and I do think the students appreciate it, and they do help with like kind of the time efficiency aspect.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good point. That they do take some front-loading time, but the students, they can see, you can show it to them when the assignment's open, so they know what they're supposed to be shooting for in terms of the standards. So after you get past that, sort of that mental thing, oh, I have to set this up, just know that you'll be able to use it well past this class. So it's not just a one time kind of deal. Okay, great, thank you. And Leonard, you want to say? Thought I saw. Okay, go ahead, please. Might be some audio problems there. Leonard, there might be some audio problems. Could you please type it in the chat? Okay, so it looks like we might be having some technical challenges there, but feel free to share as your technical issues get resolved. And the rubrics can really help with setting the standards for the students. They know specifically what they need to do for each level of the points. And ideally, ideally, they could grade the assignment themselves and have a pretty good idea of what their grade would be using the rubric before they even submit it. Okay, go ahead, Leonard. It looks like you're. I think there's still an audio problem. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and so in the rubrics, there's also a space for specific comments that you can put directly to the students. So it's not just canned responses. You can also put specific feedback to the students, and it will help streamline your grading, which can be really useful if you have a lot of students and they still get important feedback that they need. And sometimes people save comments in some sort of a file, and they'll save positive and constructive comments. And then if they assign the same assignment the next semester and the next semester, then they can use that feedback over time. And so that can help you to be more efficient in because you've saved these comments, and then you can go back to that file and copy and paste them. Okay. And I do that, and it definitely does save time. Okay, and so if you look at some of these, you could you can go through it and you can take the tools at the top of your Blackboard screen, and um, you can circle. Blue is for evidence, orange is for balance, and purple is for measurable. So if you go up to the top of that ultra screen, take your cursor, and when you get near the top of that box, you'll see a line of tools. So there's a pencil. So if you click on the pencil, then you can change the color. So I put mine on blue. You can go in and then you can kind of annotate this and say, okay, there's blue for evidence. Then you can change it, and you can change the color to orange, which is for balance. So if you want to show that they had balance somewhere, or you can change it to purple for measurable. And you could do this with your students. Okay, yep, see, okay. All right, so format using the proper APA citations. Yep, so you can measure that. You can tell if they, okay, so then expand on this idea of reconstruction, include an example. So that is addressing what we were talking about earlier, where they asked for more detail, but they didn't say what. This one says information on the idea of reconstruction and include an example. So that's better. Okay, so you noticed, okay, so you're finding evidence. Let's see. Okay, your work is an excellent example. Okay, evidence, yep. What about balance? Are we seeing any balance in here? For the orange, okay. Okay, so if you look at that first one, great work on outlining the project. I'm seeing improvement. So that's kind of balancing it out. They're saying there's some improvements on the key concepts, and so there were some areas of key concepts that weren't as well explained in their prior paper, probably. Okay, another one, important improvement. Okay, great. Yep. So that's just kind of give you an idea of how you would put in evidence or balance or measurable aspects of your feedback. Okay, great. Thank you. And then when you can show them how to find their grades quickly, and when they log into Blackboard, before they even log into a course, when you first log into Blackboard, you see that menu under where it says Blackboard at the top, and then it says institution page, and then it has all those different areas where you can click. They can go to that, and they can see all of their courses and their grades for all of those courses. So you can see that there's this one has earth science, and then they have sociology down here. And then if you keep scrolling, they're going to have their other courses. And that's a quick way for students to be able to keep up with their grades. And it's a way for you to help them to monitor, help them to know about tools to help them monitor their own performance. And sometimes students don't necessarily know, they get this feedback, but they're not exactly sure how to use it. So anytime we can help them, show them where the grades are, show them where the feedback is, show them how to take action on it, that's going to help, and it's going to have a more lasting impact on their learning and performance. And then Leonard was talking about how well, this is feedback for test questions. So you could put in automated feedback if you want for the correct response or incorrect response. Earlier, Leonard was talking about putting in specific comments and feedback to the students associated with those rubrics as well. So that's another way to do that. That's a good idea. And then you can use different tools like blogs or wikis or VoiceThread. We have Yellow Dig, is a discussion tool that we have that we can use in addition to the Blackboard discussion tool. Has anybody, there's Hypothesis is a social annotation tool. So if you want students to review a journal article, let's say Hypothesis or some kind of social marking up tool is good for that. Has anybody used any of these other things like VoiceThread or Flip or discussion boards or annotating tools? Okay,
No.
okay. All right, that's fine. So what I suggest when you're considering a new tool or considering something new for your class, I would suggest just think about something that's kind of the biggest challenge for a class, and that you think, if I kind of tweak this, maybe it would have the most impact. So select an area of your course that you want to kind of revise, and then try a tool. Just try one thing and see how it works. Get comfortable with it, get used to using it with the students. And then if you want to move on and use something else, that's great. But we are all scholars and we're accustomed to all this research and all this knowledge. And so we want to just change everything. But really, it's the best to just control your revisions for the biggest impact, and for something that's manageable for you. Um, like I used Flip for the introductions for cohorts. And so they'll just go on and they'll do these simple informal introductions, but I have some open-ended questions that they need to answer. And so it's kind of like they're introducing themselves, but we're also getting information about their knowledge about the content of the course, maybe some hobbies, things that they can connect with other people on. And the students say they like it because they can go in and they can respond to each other. And so you could do this for a project. They could look at somebody's project and then share some responses on a short video. And it does help build community in the class, and it keeps them engaged. Sometimes if we use the same techniques all the time, they might not stay as engaged. So just something to think about for the future. And portfolios, there's a Blackboard portfolio tool, and a number of our programs use portfolios for their programs. For instance, the Educational Technology Research and Assessment, they use a portfolio for their Master's in Instructional Technology program. And so the students put together a portfolio that includes all of these examples of their best work. The nursing students put together a portfolio. There's public administration does a portfolio for their master's program. So there's different ways for students to be able to show their expertise and competency on the knowledge and the content in class. Okay, and then this is a screenshot of different ways that you can provide feedback. So what I'll do is I will send a link to the recording, and so then you'll have all of this information on there. And invite students to give you feedback as well, because sometimes we think that we're clearly communicating something, but sometimes it's encoded differently by the students. So getting feedback from them about assignments and things is important too. And post-it notes, I use post-it notes for a lot of different activities in class and to design a whole course because you can just move them around. So they're very useful. Okay, so does anybody have any things that they want to raise about feedback or questions? Okay, and then Colin, could you send me an email about you were asking about some information for that you wanted? If you send me an email, then I'll respond to that. Is that okay?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. It's yjohnson@niu.edu.
Gotcha.
Okay,
I'll do
and
that.
then there are ways to get a hold of us in our department, and please do. We're happy to support you and help you with whatever questions that you have. And there's some resources that will be, I'll send along as well. Well, I thank you all for your